Welcome to the Pinnacle Take Podcast with renowned recruiter and podcast host Benjamin Mena, where he and members of the Pinnacle Society, the most distinguished collective of recruiters in the business, take on the industry's most important issues. Get ready to take a ride with this dynamic network of professionals and seize the coveted chance for personal and professional growth.
You guys are going to be ready for this episode. I've actually been looking forward to recording this for actually almost a year now. I had the chance to listen to this guest in person, and my mind was absolutely blown. I've been in this business for almost 2 decades now, and this guest does things completely different than pretty much every recruiter out there. And he's willing to share. He's willing to be an open book. He's willing to share some of the things that you can do to learn how to think bigger, to take yourself to where you are and absolutely dominate a niche, dominate a market. So that's why I'm excited to have him here as a guest. So Norm, welcome to the podcast.
Oh man, I don't know if I can live up to all of that, but really appreciate it, Ben. It's been great getting to know you over the last couple of years, and really excited to be here. I definitely have listened to your episodes of, many friends who have been on, and you just produce some great content. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So real quick 30 seconds of self-introduction. I feel like I can't cover everything as well as you.
All right. Well, I've been recruiting about 14, 15 years now. Started at a firm out of Cleveland called Direct Recruiters. Actually started here as an intern in college before doing this full time, and started on the hospital software team. And about 10 years ago, built my own practice in employee health benefits, and have been, managing partner at DRI for the last handful of years. And also recently became general partner and founder of a venture firm called MVP Growth Partners, which I believe we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode.
We are absolutely going to talk about that. So definitely stay tuned, because like I said, I was just like, wait, you could do that? My mind was just expanded after listening to you for 1 hour. So anyways, let's get started. You started off as an intern. How did you even end up in this space out of like all the different other places you could have interned?
It's a good question. I was a big sports fan growing up. My mom had a connect in Boston, and she was working there at the time when I was in college. So I actually interned at the Boston Celtics my sophomore between junior year, and it was awful. I did a lot of tape review, and that's about it. Didn't interact with anyone. And I certainly wasn't doing great work to the point where I was getting any praise. So I was like, well, how long would I have to do this? And I heard 10 to 15 years is a realistic runway of how long you have to just kind of cut tape and do a little bit of the grunt work. So I said, you know what? I kind of want to save sports as something that makes me happy and a hobby, but I got to find something else to do. So anyways, I honestly just got very lucky. My sister was giving me some advice on how to find an internship locally to Cleveland, and she had a friend who was dating one of the partners in the firm and made an intro, and the rest is history.
All right. So you got started as an intern. Talk about that.
Yeah, just, threw me right to the wolves. There was a project in the first day that was described to me as what you're going to do all summer. And then day 2, there was overflow of search work. They didn't have anyone to cover some new software engineer role. They're like, Norm, want to give it a shot? And despite me being awful for the first week on the phones, I was very robotic. I eventually hit my stride. And once they heard me go through a recruiting call smoothly, they said, all right, just do that 40 hours a week and you'll get a good reference on the way out. But did well enough where they even offered me a job on my last day.
So did you go back to school, or did you just keep on recruiting all the way through?
No. I enjoyed college, so I did go back. But the firm and the business always had kind of a special place in my heart. It just gave me a little bit of unfinished business feel leaving, and just felt right to come back and to give it, the good old college try.
Your first true year in recruiting, what did that actually look like for you?
It's a lot of rejection, just like anyone else. With that being said, the way I kind of thought about it was I'm building a foundation. These are the building blocks of my future success. So I just came in, grinded, worked hard, would try to unplug at the end of the day and then just do it again, Monday through Friday. So a lot of it was just reps and, getting comfortable, on the phone and obviously learning. I really would camp out in my boss at the time's office, Mike's office. I'd stop into other partners within the firm, like Dan and David's office. I worked, very closely with Ryan, and he gave me some really good tips over the years. So like, again, you don't achieve success by yourself. Like I would argue, and my dad gave me this advice when I started working professionally, is like you could learn on your own within 10 years. If you surround yourself with really smart people and learn from the best, you might be able to like get there in 5. And that like really stuck with me. So I really came in and tried to like build these trusted mentor-mentee relationships, where I was the mentee.
I think that's one of the mistake a lot of like newer recruiters when they come in, like how did you actually, they see the success and they're like, oh, I can do that one day. And they just go keep on doing what they're doing. How did you start absorbing some of the stuff that Mike was doing or the other partners?
I would be a little more forceful than most, early stage employees, where like, if I just like got burnt out, where I'm like, I just can't make a call right now, or I can't source anymore, or I, need a break, I wouldn't just like jump on ESPN.com and like screw off for like 20, 30 minutes. I would instead just go into someone else's office and just listen, and not like just zone out. Like I would really like listen to the call and then ask them after, like, well, why'd you do this way? Like, why'd you say this? Why'd you ask this? Like, why did you do it in that order? And I was like very cerebral, trying to learn like not only what was said, but why did they say it? And I think that started just this constant learning the business and always looking at it from every angle.
So with all this learning, like when did it actually, about how many months in or how many years in did it actually start clicking for you? Like
the way I describe it, to a lot of people, is like there's plateaus. Like there are things that are hard at first that then get easy over time. And, maybe it's all right, like talk to me about your financial compensation, like where you at right now? Being able to ask that without sounding like too scripted, sometimes that can take a recruiter 2 days. Sometimes it can take a recruiter 2 decades, like to ask that question in a very approachable way. Again, whether it's that or whether it's feeling comfortable to take on any search, regardless of, if it's within your wheelhouse or not, or be able to pitch any client, regardless of your knowledge in a market. Like all those things are different steps and, take longer and longer. But I would say like within being comfortable on the phones, that took like a week to 10 days. Feeling like I was at least as good as the average recruiter, that took probably 6 to 8 months. When it was, hey, I think I'm the best in my specific segment at this like specific job to fill, in maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And within 4 years, I felt like I could work any search, anytime, anywhere. There's not many people that could do it better because I just know I'm going to outwork someone.
And did they have you start off like full desk or were you like 180?
No, it was really 180. It was, hey, we got a client. They need to fill this. Norm, go do your thing. And then maybe a couple years in, I started to say, you know what, like I really think I could build some clients. And, even though I'm young, I still think I have something to offer here. Those like years 3 through 5 were like very similar in billings, in production, in success. But I was getting better in those years. And like year 5 to 6 was when like everything changed. Partially because, I think I just got very confident in how to pitch like our services, and I started getting my own clients. And then also I found this new space, which opened up a whole world of new opportunities.
So like the way that you guys are structured, you guys have like teams and everything. Did you just want to have a team, or did you like want to grow your own personal desk? Like what was that motivation to really jump forward to like the sales side from this safe recruiting side?
Yeah. I saw other people doing it and I felt I had that potential. I had that capability. So, I sat Mike down maybe 2.5 years into my tenure. I'm like, Mike, I love recruiting. I love the firm. Love working with you. Like, there's nothing wrong. But I also think I would not be meeting my potential if I didn't eventually build my own practice. So I said, like, what can I have the goal of starting at some point in the future? Like, we don't know when that will happen. That doesn't step on your toes. He's like, well, I do everything inside the 4 walls of a hospital from a tech standpoint. How about you find companies that deliver their healthcare services outside the 4 walls of a hospital? So that led me to a lot of like remote patient monitoring, telemedicine companies which were great, but a lot of them were small startups, weren't growing a ton, were only hiring a little bit every year and didn't have these huge recruiting budgets to use us on every search. So we do, a couple placements with a good client, but you can't really get scale when your biggest clients are only hiring you, one or twice a year, for a strategic position. So eventually I stumbled my way into the employee benefits world with a company called Livongo. I got, again, very lucky. I met a company. At the time, there were 20, 30 people. I knew a couple of their executives. I assumed they sold to hospitals. They didn't. They asked me to help them. They asked me to fill 10 open searches. I think I closed maybe half of them. And they were all very difficult, like high leverage searches. And again, in contingent work, if you're batting 300, you're like going to the Hall of Fame. Like placing 50% was really, really nice. And definitely a win. That company eventually IPO'd and sold to Teladoc for $18.5 billion. So like my first client also at the same time built my reputation in this new market. And I kind of just like rode their coattails a little bit into the reputation, of like the recruiter in that space, from probably that like 2016, 17 through now.
So you feel like, here's the thing, a lot of recruiters, like they'll fill like a few positions for a company. How did you use that to leverage your reputation to go grow and expand the way that you have?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to build something. So when I got that opportunity, I kind of looked at myself in the mirror and said, Norm, you can fill all 10. But if you fill all 10 and you don't have another search in this new space, then you have to start over again. And like, I didn't want to start over again. I wanted to like go into a new market and just build and build and build and like build on top of it. So what I told myself when I started those searches is, yes, you have to absolutely find great candidates for Livongo for all of these specific roles. But at the same time, I want every CEO and like hiring manager that I would like to work with one day to know I was working those searches, because I thought, all right, if they know I'm working them, if I play the networking game, if I ask them for their help, if I pitch the living hell out of Livongo and it occurs to them like, recruiter I use doesn't sound like that, or doesn't ask the same questions Norm asks, or doesn't call executives to get referred to direct contributors like Norm does, I'm creating differentiation in their mind. And again, that worked, because at the end of some of these calls, when I'd say, hey, Ben, I'm calling you on behalf of one of my top clients, they're doing some awesome things. I want to be honest, this is not for you. You're way overqualified for the job, but you look to be an expert in the space and I want to pick your brain and network. And then I pitched Livongo fantastic and then asked them who they could recommend. At the end, I would ask, all right, Ben, you've been so helpful, really appreciative. How can I help you? And either I would get a, what do you mean? How can you help me? Like, and then I'd explain like, well, like, you hire a team and you have a large company that's successful. Are there any skill sets you're having a hard time finding? Are there any, type of skill sets that if they came across my desk, you'd want to know about them? But more often than not, I would ask that question and they'd be like, well, I'm looking for a VP of marketing or a customer success leader or more salespeople or whatever it may be. And you get new clients that way. So I would highly recommend to any recruiter, use your current searches as an excuse to call your dream clients. And the challenge is you have to do two things. You have to represent great companies that if you represent them, that enhances your brand. Because again, if I was pitching a company they thought very little of, that wouldn't mean anything to them. Two, also, not only like do you have to have great clients, but you have to like pitch really well and you have to run like a really great recruiting call, because that's essentially your commercial of, all right, well, this is how this person's going to conduct themselves when they're working on behalf of my organization. Oh, my always North Star is like, I want to be the best recruiter that person who picked up the phone or who I got introduced has ever talked to. Because if you can establish that in their mind, who do you think they're going to pick to use, when they need to build their team?
And just to recap, like the best recruiter calls that you make, like what are the main points that you try to cover during each of those calls?
I definitely always want it to be a multi-purpose call. Like, I want it to be valuable for me, but more importantly, I want it to be extremely valuable for that other person on the other line. You need to bring value. You need to bring insights. You need to bring knowledge. You have to bring examples of previous successes to, in their mind, kind of put you in a category that they don't put many other people. So what I want to get across in any new call with a new person in my industry, whether they're at manager level or C level or anywhere in between, is I've worked with some of the best companies. I've worked with some of the top talent. I know almost everyone in the space, that's worth knowing. And I will be there to help you when you need me. And I'm not going to bark up the wrong tree when the timing's not right. So I think what a lot of recruiters get wrong is they're high pressure and they're very like, what's in it for me? What am I trying to accomplish? And what's really important in any business, but especially recruiting, is like, take yourself out of it. If the client wins and the candidate wins, you win by default. So if you can help those two win, you get to win with them as opposed to win at their expense.
Love that. So you started like attacking this industry. I almost say like you fell in love with this industry.
I did. And I got lucky, right? Like, I fell into something, I learned about it, and it was all like health and wellness. And I come from a healthcare family. Like, my mom was the dean of nursing at a couple colleges. My sister is a OBGYN. My dad was a medical malpractice doctor. My uncle ran the radiology department at Stanford. His oldest son is a radiologist at Harvard. My grandfather was a very well-known radiologist, and his name was Norman. That's why I'm named that. He passed away a couple months before I was born. So like, we have this healthcare family. My aunt was a doctor. Like, everywhere you look, there's doctors, there's nurses, there's healthcare people. So it was always part of the discussion. So sure, like, hospital software and all that tech was very interesting to me. But when it was focused on prevention and keeping people healthy at home, that was even like more exciting, at least for me. And the fact that I could like be the face of the company and like build that out has been a dream come true.
You're working in this health space, like, just out of curiosity, has it also, impacted your own health?
Yeah, I've had a health journey. I used to have a lot of gastrointestinal symptoms and fatigue. And I got tested and, we found some things and we had to change diet and we had to, have kind of like a different care plan. And I feel so much better than I did 10 years ago when I started this journey. So yes, my own personal experience, I do believe, makes me a better advocate for my clients in the space at large, because I've seen how small or even medium-sized changes in day-to-day eating habits or exercise habits or sleep or whatever can really make a huge impact on how you feel and how you can perform both professionally and personally.
So with all this growth, with starting to like take over this industry, starting to become the face, when did you start realizing, and I know this is your talk that I got the chance to see in person, that the investors are the key?
Yeah. It's a good question. So, when your first client in a new space eventually IPOs and sells for $18.5 billion, it's, again, a huge boost to your personal brand and, how others in the market feel about your, ability to predict future success. And also, those people you placed at that company are eternally grateful. So it all started at conferences when I would meet those dozen or so people I placed at Livongo. And interestingly enough, about 8 months after I made those initial placements at Livongo, I get a call from their chief commercial officer. And he says, "Norm, I really need your help. Can you help me?" And like, Ben, if your top client calls you, you'll do probably just about anything they ask. So anyways, I'm like, "Jim, yeah, you got it. What do you need?" It's like, "Well, I'm helping these two entrepreneurs. They started this business doing their doctorate thesis, getting their PhD. I really think they're onto something and I think you can help them." I said, "Okay, I'll meet these guys." So I meet these two, they give me a pitch. And in that pitch, like, I went from like being in the back of my chair, just kind of listening, figuring like this is kind of like a garage style, like out of their parents' garage type company. And what they described to me was something that I thought would be revolutionary. And when I got off the phone with them, I thought to myself, I'm looking at the future, and these guys are going to be worth, the company's going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Little did I know I was selling them short. Those two people were Dan Perez and Gabriel Mecklenburg, the co-founders of a company called Hinge Health. They were the first and still to this day the top company in remote physical therapy. So if you have some sort of musculoskeletal injury, you can either go to in-person PT where you have to find a doctor and network and then drive to and from every single time you're going to go get PT, or you can get a pre-programmed iPad sent to your house with smart sensors where you can do all of your PT remotely via telemedicine in the comfort of your own home, zero copay paid for the employer or health plan that covers your health insurance. So again, this was novel concept at the time. They had maybe a couple pilots. They had maybe 15, 20 total employees. They IPO'd a couple of months ago for $3 billion. So anyways, with Livongo being the first and Hinge, within my first year, also being one of the fastest growing companies in the space, we placed 36 people at Hinge. So when you combine those two groups, we're talking about over $20 billion in public value in their IPOs. And you have 46 people that at conferences would give me bear hugs to the point where my ribs would be a little sore after coming to these things. Norm, do you realize that equity we negotiated hard for in my offer letter, that's worth millions now? You're so happy. It's the best feeling you can have as a recruiter. But you also realize, those investors, they're not doing too bad. Those are the people who are really earning. So what I asked myself at some point in the future years was, Norm, if you ever meet a company that gets those goosebumps on your arm the same way those came about when you talked to Dan and Gabriel for the first time, when Jim Pursley pitched you Livongo for the first time, you cannot not ask. You have to at least ask, can I invest or can I take some of my fees in equity? And again, I was very particular on which company I was willing to kind of do it as a first, because this. People from our background usually don't get these opportunities, and they definitely don't get them multiple times. So I'm all right, if I do this, I got to be really picky and know that if the first one doesn't work, I'm probably not getting a second chance at it.
I want to ask about that in a second, but I want to go back to the very beginning of sitting down with these two. So the Livongo commercial person, and it was just you need to sit down with him. Was it for the purpose of they needed help hiring, or hey, I just
some help hiring?
Okay.
But again, a lot of companies need help hiring. You meet probably in our jobs, maybe a couple hundred companies a year that you discuss hiring opportunities with. Again, some of them you turn down, some of them might turn you down. You're not going to convert all of those. But, we talked to a lot of companies, but something about what they said and how they said it and their value prop made me believe they weren't going to be my typical, client or even average client. I felt they were going to be a very good one for a lot of reasons. And, some of that is growth and success in their own right, which then they'll make more hires.
Jumping back to this equity placement, how do you think about, for the people listening that have maybe even thought about that, how do you even talk about that deal with a client?
That's a really good question. So let's think about in our businesses. And again, I want to be very specific. I think what I'm about to describe works really well in B2B software. I think direct to consumer technology or brick and mortar businesses that are manufacturing based or take a lot of capital, you almost have to throw those out. Those markets, you're probably not going to be able to do the same thing. So for example, someone I deeply respect and who has a kick-ass practice, who is one of the top recruiters on the entire planet, Alan Fisher, couldn't technically do this because accounting firms are not B2B software companies. You can't found an accounting firm and within 2 years, the company's worth billions of dollars. It just doesn't work that way. But in B2B software, if you're niche, we know a lot of information that even investors in our space don't know, because we know what companies are hiring. We know what companies are not hiring. We know what companies are selling a lot of technology and services. We know what companies aren't. We know what pricing models are very popular with the buyers. We know what pricing models don't resonate with the buyers. We see what they're buying, why they're buying, how they're buying, and what quantities they're buying, what the pricing models are. So we get thousands, and if we have teams, tens of thousands of data points. And if you see pattern recognition, and if you can see, well, this company that I'm just meeting reminds me a lot of other companies that have been successful. They have the same pricing models. They have the same commercial go-to-market structure. They have the same value prop or general cost savings model that these other companies that have been ultra successful are doing. You can then use that information to become an informed investor. And then you're not just throwing darts at a dartboard, you're being incredibly strategic. So I meet a company a little over 2 years ago at a conference, and I meet this new CEO, never met him before. And I asked him, like, what do you do? He's like, well, I founded a company in this space within the last year. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Tell me about it. Work with a lot of companies. So he gives me his pitch, and I got goosebumps. I remembered the conversation I had with Dan and Gabriel at Hinge Health 8 years prior. And I'm like, this is getting me just as jazzed up as they got me all those years ago. And I thought to myself, I'm like, you're not going to let this one, go past and, miss. Like, you got to ask. So he gives me his 2-minute spiel on what his company is. And I look him right in the eye and I say, Elon, I want to tell you 2 things. And they're both going to surprise you. First, that's the best pitch I've heard from an early stage founder since I met the co-founders of Hinge Health. And he immediately knew who those were and was like, whoa. And I'm like, second thing is I want to invest. And he's like, Norm, are you out of your mind? This is a crazy early stage company. Like, the chances we succeed are very, very low. Like, and you're a recruiter. You're not even an investor. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, for your own knowledge, I do invest in some funds that we work with. Because in a space, usually a venture capital firm will work with a lot of different portfolio companies and have a lot of portfolio companies that sell to the same buyer. I noticed a lot of my clients had the same investors. So I eventually met them, got to have a really good relationship with them. They'd refer me business from time to time. And at a certain point I asked, hey, I love working with you guys. I want to be, working with you guys even closer. If I invested in the fund, would that be something you would want? And they were like, yeah, that would be awesome. Because then we'd know you have a vested interest in our companies getting the best people. So it worked out. So I said, first off, I'm already an LP in a couple funds. Like, I can help you there, meet some new funds. But more importantly, I have a network that can be really, really helpful to you. And I think my network can help you be successful quicker. So he said, well, I get that, but that's your opinion. I kind of need to see it. I said, all right, I have no problem showing you what I'm capable of before you give me an opportunity to invest. It actually helps me vet the deal and do my own due diligence in the process. So I'm happy to make the intros because it also helps me. Do you mind if I make a couple intros in the next couple of days? He's like, yeah, no, go for it. You got it. So anyways, they described this business that, again, had a lot of similarities from companies that had done extremely well. So within a couple of days, he got introduced to 9 very influential people in the employee benefits space. And within those days of talking to those people, I get a call from him. He's like, blank check, whatever you want to write, I'll take. Keep introducing me to people like this, and you'll be able to invest in every round we ever have. I'm like, all right, that's awesome. Great. But before I told him how much I wanted to write, I'm like, let me talk to each of them before I get back to you. So I call them, and I'm like, what do you think? And they're all like, Norm, this is really cool. One of the companies tried to buy the company. Others tried partnering. One of them signed a reseller agreement really quickly. So I already saw the shrewdest people in my network thought this company was very high potential. So I loved the fact that I could invest. But when I asked, I'm like, hey, can these other people invest? He's like, no, I obviously they'd be great investors, but I can't have a complicated cap table. I'm going to need to raise a Series A and B and potentially beyond from institutional investors. And they really prefer a very non-complicated cap table. So as much as I would love to be able to have all of you invest, I really only have to allow you the opportunity. And, that's just what I can do for you. I said, well, again, I appreciate it. I'm going to. With that being said, in the future, is there a mechanism where we could invest as a group? He's like, yeah, there's something called an SPV. You should do some research on it. So that came in my mind, and that's ultimately what generated this whole last 2.5-year project of creating my own like venture firm along with a couple other partners along the way. That's given us a level of upside in this business that I never could have dreamed of. And again, it all is dependent on being very knowledgeable and a top recruiter like in this niche market, which gives us the opportunity to do it.
With some of these, like when you're doing like a equity and like an equity trade for recruiting, is it like the whole fee? Do you get equity? Is it partial fees? Like how do you structure that sometimes?
You can choose your own adventure. I invested cash personally.
Okay.
First was all cash. The second tranche was a combination of cash and some search work paid in equity. I had to buy my partners out of like that share because, I wanted that on my side. So we worked something out there. And then interestingly, my third bite of the apple at that company was an SPV where we raised over $850K when the business was worth $18 million. And that bought us about 4.7% of the company. But what's exciting is not that we raised $850K in total, it's that we raised it from over 80 investors. And what that's done is it now has 80 industry insiders who are all incentivized to help that company thrive. And that's why the amount we've helped, I would argue, and I think Elon would agree, is probably more than 4.7% of the help they've received. So we're much out kicking our coverage in terms of what we own versus like how much we've helped.
So these are 80 other people that like were willing to like, hey, I trust Norm.
We trust each other, right? Like I invested because they recommended it. And it's that fact that all 80 of us helped ourselves vet the deal further than any of us could have vetted it ourselves. And that's the magic of what we've created.
I want to stop there. Like this is 80 people that in the industry that have a massive amount of respect for you. If I'm in another industry or I'm a recruiter listening to this, what's a game plan to get 80 people to trust me, write a check to be part of me?
Yeah, well, it's a couple things. It's doing work over a very long period of time and doing it very well. So again, at that point, I already had 8 years of experience in that space. I had recruited for some of the most successful companies in the history of the market. And I've consistently, along with my team, built the reputation that, hey, if you want to grow a world-class talent organization, and bring in the best talent, like there's really one first option. If you want to be that next unicorn, because a lot of other companies that have gotten to billion-dollar valuations, have used us, and it almost can be seen as a rite of passage in our market. So yes, there are a lot of steps to get there, but it's just showing up, working your ass off every day, and trying to be the best recruiter in your niche. Unless you're that, it's almost impossible to do the second part of this. The 500 members we have now, and at the time, I think we had 400. So again, 25% of our group invested, 75% did not. So like, it's not like we got the majority of people to invest. Like there were still some people who weren't so sure if we would be able to make it successful, but it all started growing in numbers of like how many people were interested in this. When I first asked those first 9 people or 8 people, whatever it was, hey, like if I find another one of these that you're excited about, would you consider investing? And they're like, yeah, like as long as I don't have to like be obligated to, I'd love the option to like see what you're looking at. Then I started to ask myself, all right, am I as different as I think I am at the early stage investor standpoint? So I reached out to every CEO I knew of that had driven a valuation over 100 million in my space. And I reached out and I said, hey, I'm not going to spend more than 5 minutes, but I want to ask you 3 questions. Number one, how helpful were your early investors in introducing you to potential clients? That was like almost zero. Like, they're like, yeah, like it was very much sink or swim. We really didn't start getting intros to potential clients until Series A or even Series B. Like those investors had the connections. The early stage investors did not have like a niche expertise and like a specific knowledge of a one market. They're just more spray and pray. Let's make 100 investments, maybe 10 hit, 90 will go to zero. That wasn't the type of numbers I was looking for. So that was the first piece. The second question I asked was, how often do other companies, early stage companies, approach you to be an advisor or a board member of their companies? And that was very few and far between. Sure, like Jim was an advisor of Hinge, but like one of the only times an executive at a company also sits as an advisor of another company, usually because they're not asked, not that they're not allowed to. So I asked, like, hey, would you want to do more advisory work and sit on boards if there was that option? They're like, yeah, 100%. Like, I would love that. The last question I asked is, how often do you get to invest in companies that you believe in this space? And they said, that's never. I have never been approached by a founder or even a venture syndicate to invest in a deal in a space I know well. So I said, like, if I come across a company I'm bullish on, I'm most likely going to put my own money in. Would you at least want to see it as a potential opportunity to invest? No strings attached, no obligation to invest. That list ballooned over 200 people. And when that happened, I realized, like, all right, I have something real here. But to your point, how many people are going to write a 4-figure or even 5-figure check to an executive recruiter who's never run a venture firm and is willing to trust that, like, I know the market as well as I think I do? So again, I was realistic. I wasn't going to build this thing myself, didn't want to build it myself. So I asked myself, all right, who in my network has a very different skill set than I do that can really be strong where I'm weak and bring people into the group that I want in that I don't have access to? So the first person I reached out to is a guy named Jason Perot. Again, the area of expertise I'm in is employee health benefits. He happened to be the head of benefits, AT&T and Boeing Airlines for 27 years combined. So like 2 Fortune 40 companies. He built some of the most sophisticated benefits offerings in the entire country at those 2 groups, and was also a founder of a incubator of sorts within the employee benefits space that was designed to help early stage companies get exposure to potential buyers of innovative technologies. So he was a really unique person to bring in. And when I asked him, hey, you're already a part of my first 200, I want to get you more involved. How more involved would you potentially want to get? He said, Norm, I've been actually meaning to call you. I love what this is, like, more than you know. I want to run this thing with you. Like, I want to be an equal partner. I'm like, Jason, that's amazing. I haven't really thought about what the structure would look like. The group is already 200 people. Like, just walk me through how I can justify that. Not saying no, but I do want to understand, like, why that would make sense. Like, from your perspective, walk me through it. He says, well, I have a network and I could probably add 200 benefits leaders who are currently leading benefits at a Fortune 1000 company into this group. Say, Jason, the second you cross 200, we're equal partners. No problem with that. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours, the whole way. But I can't split it 50-50 with you because I think we need a third person. You've run benefits and been the customer. I've seen all these different angles of the business from my unique seat, but I've never run commercial at one of these companies. And there's a phenotype in our market called benefits consultants that are very influential in the buying process. They're invited to every RFP and pitch of a new vendor. So I said, we've never either been in a consulting firm either. And like, they're obviously very important stakeholders in these deals. I'm like, I'd like to find someone who's done both, so we can really do this with 3 partners. So the person I had in mind is a guy named Manny Menendez. He's fantastic. He was CRO of a company called Consumer Medical that sold for over $300 million as his last exit. That was actually bigger than you would expect or think, in the fact that they didn't take any venture money. So like, all of that went to the original like angel investors and the employees. Like, they didn't have to take 200 to 300 and pay their investors back. That was all profit. So that was super big exit and very notable. He also exited a business called Bloom Health. So he had done a couple, and he had been a benefits consultant for over a decade at Hewitt and Associates, which is now Aon. And he spent a couple of years at Towers, which is now Willis Towers Watson. Those are 2 of the 3 biggest benefits consulting firms in the world. So when I was able to have both of them join and become equal partners and, help me build this into what it is today with over 500 potential investors, I felt like we had something truly unique. And so far, the market has reacted really well to us and what we're doing.
And with all this, you now have like 500 people in this venture network.
Yes.
Are you also getting a lot of like, hey, I know you, I've invested with you, but I also need recruiting help?
Of course, like that's going to happen naturally. Like that is almost a foregone conclusion that like if you're going to invest your money with us, you'll probably trust us to do your recruiting work also. And again, we can't represent every client. We have some certain conflicts of interest and, it doesn't always convert for one reason or another. But yes, like has it helped my recruiting business? A ton. My podcast has helped my recruiting business. Like all these things have. And again, like people ask me all the time, especially in the last year, Norm, like how much of your time are you spending on venture versus recruiting? And like they're trying to figure it out. And I'm like, hang on, let me just explain it to you this way. First, I'll give you like the logical and like answer, and then I'll give you an analogy, which is like really telling. The logical answer is, what's the job of a recruiter and a venture capitalist? To meet with early stage companies if they're in a like new market that's growing, that have the opportunity to grow. If I meet a company like that, they can easily be a recruiting client. If they meet certain other thresholds, they may be able to be an investment. But again, like I am, and my partners are so picky on what we pick to invest in. Again, we might only do a couple deals a year. We're not trying to do massive volume. We're trying to put a lot of effort into a very few amount of companies that we really believe in, that, have really strong references from their existing client base. So again, like my day is just spent talking to early stage founders of very high potential companies, and they'll go down one or both paths just naturally. And when people, ask, well, like, what is this like? Like, use an analogy. The way I describe it is I get to go fishing every day with the people I like, listen to the music I like, and we're catching fish every single day, like recruiting, right? Like finding great candidates, finding great clients, making a deal every couple days. Like that's the just fishing and catching the fish. But maybe once or twice a year, a whale comes on that line and I get to, bring in the whale occasionally as well. That's the investment. So again, like it's all a part of the business model, and one doesn't take away from the other. They actually, like both combined, make the other side stronger. But you got to think of it as, hey, I'm going to meet a lot of companies. Not many of them can be investments. But when one does, do I have an infrastructure built to actually support it and drive value, for that founder? Because we don't want to be one-hit wonders. Like we want our first couple deals to help us get our next deals, because they're so effusive in their praise that we were really helpful, and they wouldn't have gotten to where they got to, without our.
All right. So I love that you've like actually mastered this market. Like you've become the go-to person. So let me take a step back. Like looking at market mastery and the stuff that you're actively doing this very moment, or maybe have done recently, you have a podcast.
Yes.
You have an investment firm.
Yeah.
Almost every single time I chat with you, you're at a conference and you're not at your desk. Like you're bouncing across the country at a conference. Like you're talking to like investors. Like what else are you doing on this, like completely dominating a market?
It's just helping people every day. It's meeting great people, getting referred to their great people and people they recommend, and just generally meeting someone, being like, hey, I'm Norm. Here's what I do. Here's what I've done. But like, how can I help you? Like, where does all these things I do fit into your goals? And when you help other people, you end up getting helped yourself. But you got to start with, what can I do for you? And then you do enough for them where they're like, hey, how can I return the favor? And it's like, let's just help someone else.
9 years ago, when you started talking to these VCs and PE firms, how did you actually get in the door? Or was it the companies that you supported that really created those openings?
At first, it was a combination of either telling my story of like, hey, here are the companies I've represented and you've heard of them, they've done well, like I can do that for your portfolio. Or asking my clients, hey, can I get referred to your investors? Like it looks like invest in these other companies. I'm not working with them. They are ideal clients. They're actually like in markets I'm super passionate about personally. Would love to be able to help them. Are you open to making an intro? Have we done well enough for you that you'd recommend us to other groups within that venture firm? So, it's really just, again, asking for help, and I think That's what a lot of people get wrong about a lot of businesses, but especially whether it be recruiting or investing. You only start to stagnate when you decide yourself that you can't learn anything more, or you've learned everything there is to learn. And I see this a lot with the people who go to the best colleges, go to the Ivy Leagues, get their MBA, work for, one of the very well-respected management consulting firms or something that's like very prestigious. And then they leave and they're like, well, I'm a made person. Like I went to this school, I worked at this company, like I know everything. And anyone who hasn't, like, knows nothing. There is some of that. And we see that occasionally. But what I would say is, again, like if you're always thirsting to learn and learn from people who know more than you, like you'll never cap out.
You also mentioned earlier in the podcast, like with all the conversations that you have, all the conversations that your team has, there's a lot of data points. First of all, how are you capturing those data points? And then how are you analyzing those data points to like see how the market's moving? Like, hey, this is where we need to go recruit in, or maybe this is where we might need to go invest.
Yeah. I'm very strategic with my team, and I communicate with my team about the big picture strategy of what we're doing. So like my entire team knows like what we look for in clients, how we want to operate a recruiting business. So what I've tried to build over the last 10 years since I've been like managing, so to speak, I think Mitch has been with me almost like 8+ years now, is we want the best clients. Like we want to work for the companies people want to work for. So I asked my team, is there any companies that we just really struggle to recruit out of? If we can't beat them, join them. If we can't get their people out, why don't we just make them a client? Because we're not getting anything currently out of trying to recruit people out. People are happy. People are thrilled there. Great. Let's get more people through the front door, not try taking people out the back. And then 2, I'm asking what companies are doing great. Like what companies are hard to recruit out of? Are there certain companies where it's really hard to recruit salespeople or marketing people or product people out of? And like, I also want to understand, why is that company succeeding? Is it because their product's the best? Is it because they have the best sales team and they like go to market commercially extremely well? So again, like I am just always curious of why companies win, why companies lose, why some succeed, why some fail. And if you're able to either mentally or like on some sort of like Excel spreadsheet or program track all these things, you can start to see pattern recognition either in the data or just by like recall.
What's the biggest data points that you watch now?
I watch for business models. How do they drive revenue? What value do they bring to the customer? Is there a guarantee or like performance-based metric in their pricing model? Do they actually save the customer money in year 1 or even month 1 post-implementation? Is very important in the employee benefits space. So there's certain things I look for. And again, like all of those could be the right things, but if you have the wrong founders and it's either the wrong fit for you personality-wise with your venture firm, or you're just like, there's nothing about these founders that remind me of any of the ones I've worked with that have been successful, that's probably a red flag. So it's hard to find a company that you see all the great things on like the bones of the business and you believe in the founders. If you find both, there's a lot of mistakes that can be like made and a lot of things wrong with the business that the business can still thrive. But if you have a flawed business model or a flawed founding team, there's almost nothing that can fix that.
Like, okay, now talking about
if it's a really cool company where I don't like the founding team, I will track them and I'm like, maybe in a couple of years I can buy them for not much. And then bring in a leadership team that we pick that can execute on that very good business model.
I love the vision right there. I want to talk about your team real quick. So you started growing your team about 10 years ago. How big is your team now?
Yeah. So again, we have 10 full-time, and then we have a couple people that are cross-function. So what do I mean by that? Those 2 are people that focus on a specific skill set, and they can do it within digital health, but they can also do it anywhere else. Ben Seamus does great on our finance roles, CFO, VP of finance, but he can do it for a hospital software company. He can do it for any tech company or any company at all. He's the best CFO recruiter in the country, in my opinion. I've yet to meet someone better. Then Shauna Rosner, she's an attorney. She places our general counsel and associate general counsel positions, but she also places people at her law firm clients, other corporations like digital health she can do, but she can do anything that's within the legal realm. And then everyone else is specifically focused on digital health only. So we have people who are focused on sales, marketing, product, ops, client service and account management, product, marketing, tech, you name it. So the way I segment my team is I have specialists that do a specific function. So it's marketing, could be a chief marketing officer, could be a senior marketing manager of engagement marketing, or anything in between. The same person works it because they have expertise in marketing within digital health. Doesn't matter what the level of role is. They can do anything, high, low, side to side. And it's the same thing in all the other functions. So what I realized is what makes me a great recruiter and potentially a great investor. I know my niche really well. I almost make it easier on my team where I'm like, you just need to know the niche within the niche. You need to know the niche of digital health, and you need to know the niche of product or marketing or development and technology or sales. You don't need to do all roles at all times for all people, allowing you to specialize, allowing you to become an expert much, much quicker. And the other advantage as people build their teams, there's very little infighting. Everyone's happy for each other when they succeed because there's no jealousy. It's not like, well, why did Tyler get that chief operating officer position? It's like, because he places operations people. Not because like he brought me a sourdough his wife baked, even though that is very much appreciated. It didn't hurt, but wasn't the reason. So these are the things that, like, again, some people don't think of, but like what you want to create within a recruiting firm and a recruiting team is camaraderie and trust and, a team that roots for each other. It's a lot easier when they don't feel like they're competing with each other.
What does the billings of the team look like? And also maybe like, what do yours look like with everything you have going on?
Yeah, it's fluctuated quite a bit. So I'm only sharing this to give people context. Hey, like, what did billings increase from the time you were top recruiter on Mike's team to starting your own practice? And like, what did that do? So I mentioned I was kind of stagnant in year 3 to 5. I was averaging billings, not take home pay. I wish, trust me. In those 3 to 5 years, I think it was like averaging somewhere between 400 to 500 in billings, which is good. Like, it's good enough to get you into Pinnacle. Nothing to sneeze at, but like, do we know plenty of people who do a hell of a lot more? Yes. Wasn't satisfied, wasn't content. That year I met Livongo was like, I remember I met them in November. So like, I technically didn't make the placements till like December, January. So like, all those billings probably hit January of that next year. I remember the end of Q1 of the next year, I had billed 400 plus in that first quarter. So I had already matched my 3 years prior, like, average production just in the first 3 months. I finished the year right under $1 million. I think I was like 970 that first year going into the new space. After that, I kind of fluctuated from like low ones. I think 1.2 was the next year. And then when I started hiring a team, we went up to like 3-ish. And then in the COVID year, I think it went from 3 to 6, like overnight in that like 2020 year. That was insane. And like, that was a very, very small team. We have yet to hit those numbers until this year. We should pass $6 million this year with about 10 people, give or take. And again, 3 of those people are ops people, so they're not all recruiters. We do have some ops function. So my billings have kind of vacillated between like 1.5 and 2.5 the last like 5 years, which I'm extremely proud of and really exciting.
I know we were talking beforehand, like you've made operational function, the ops function, a priority. Talk about that.
So I'm not going to lie. You cannot build a recruiting practice without working your ass off, at least at this level. Like, it can't be done. You need to work extremely hard. But I think what I didn't do in the early years was work overly smart and strategic. And I realized this a couple of years ago. I was doing great, like one of the top producers in my firm or even like in Pinnacle for that matter. But I felt like I was burning out. Like, I felt like I don't know how much longer I can do this at this pace a couple of years ago. And I was 34 at the time. Like, it was not time for me to just say, all right, well, it's been a good career, I'm out. So I'm like, all right, I got to make this like scalable long term and make it achievable long term, to do it without feeling like I was burning the candle at both ends. I truly had felt like I created a very lucrative hamster wheel for myself. That as long as I was running, like the money was coming, but like I was going nowhere. Like I wasn't growing. I wasn't doing anything strategic. I was just kind of maintaining what we had built as a group. So about 2 years ago, I, talked to Tyler on my team. I said, Tyler, you're a kick-ass recruiter. You do some positions extremely well, but I think you can help the team more if you spend part of your time recruiting, but part of the time as my chief of staff, who can help me with some of the tasks that you could easily do at the same level I can and give me a little bit of scalability. So that was my first attempt. And that was great. Tyler's been awesome in the role and like he's grown so much. He trains recruiters on my team. He, helps manage client interactions. He closes deals. He finds all the potential landmines and deals that, our less experienced team, doesn't know to look for. He's just like air traffic control on like all the deals in process. He's awesome. But even he couldn't do it all alone. So then about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, ish, I don't know, time flies. I hired Randy as my ops manager. He came in, kicked ass. Our production increased. I felt like I was able to do more strategic things. Obviously, in that time, I built like this VC firm, which I never would have been able to do, like just kind of doing things the way we used to do them. And even he, earlier in the year, was like, Norm, I'm getting to my capacity. Like things are starting to fall through the cracks. Can I make a hire? I'm like, sure, just walk me through the business case. It's like, what does that mean? I'm like, all right, let's like walk through it. And then like after a little iterating, he was like, all right, if we hire this person, here's what she can do. Here's what this can free me up to do. Here's what this can free up you up to do. And like, this should allow us to build more. And so far, Tyler and Randy's recommendations have really helped us hit a level of production we haven't hit since a once in a lifetime generational pandemic that had some advantages, at least in our business. Well, where now we feel like we can sustain the success for a long time without any one person, especially me, burning out.
I got 2 more questions before we jump over to the quick fire questions, just to be cognizant of the time and everything. You still got a few more minutes?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
You've talked about the Friday dashboard. What is that?
Friday dashboard?
The 5 metrics that you need to watch to keep your desk healthy.
I actually don't have like 5 in particular. My general, like, am I doing the right things? Am I pointing in the right direction? Is the team pointing in the direction? Are we meeting great new people every day? Like for me, I'm like, I need to meet founders of new companies I've never heard of every single day. My team's like, hey, if I'm in marketing focused or product focused, or like you need to meet new people that you've never met before. And if you every single day are meeting anywhere from 2 to 5 new people, I'd say for a new recruiter, maybe like 8 to 10 a day, new people, like you are constantly adding to your candidate war chest at which to pull from at some point. And again, I think what a lot of people get wrong is someone gets a search from their client and they're like, well, I need to fill it. So they call people and pitch that job. That's not what a recruiter does. That's what like Monster does. What we need to do is like, we need to understand a candidate's growth path and what they're trying to achieve in their career and only tell them about the opportunity if it fits what they're looking for. If it doesn't, you can still talk to them. You can still tell them about it, but you got to be like, actually, based on everything you just shared, I don't think you're a candidate. Here's why. I don't think it's going to be a great fit for you. Do I have your permission to still tell you about it so we can network and maybe help recommend it to someone in your network who you're friends with? But like just being honest and being like very direct and upfront about fit, I think is what separates good from really good recruiters.
You're part of the Pinnacle Society. Why did you join them and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So, Pinnacle's an amazing group. I'm lucky to have just, been elected to the board, which I'm like just thrilled over. Pinnacle's 80 of the top boutique recruiters in the country. And what I wanted to do in joining maybe about 4 years ago-ish was I wanted to be exposed to a peer group the best. Like I wanted to be in a room where there were other people who had achieved much more and had way more years of experience than I did. Because again, like I think a key to my success has been just trying to learn from as many people as humanly possible and never feeling like, all right, I've gotten to this level of success. Like I'm done learning now. Like I'll learn till the day I'm dead. Like I just feel that way. I'm a lifelong learner. So for me, it was just an opportunity to learn from the best and be able to have a peer group of people that are all driven to be the best and to be great and to really elevate recruiting to a new level externally, like for people not in the business. And that's, what really drives us and what we strive for.
We've covered a lot. And before we jump over to the quick fire questions, and they don't need to be quick answers, is there anything else that I should have asked you that you want to go deeper on?
I would just say, just don't make this business about you. And I'm not saying to you, Ben, I think you know this, but like any recruiter, like whenever something happens, it's not happening to you. Like that person's doing what they think is either in the best interest of their company or the best interest of them and their families. So like when someone turns down a job, they didn't turn down the job because they think Norm's a schmuck. Like they turned the job down because they didn't think it was the best move for them. Same thing with like your hiring managers. They don't not accept, make an offer because they're like, oh yeah, like Ben, did this or did that. Like it's because they didn't think that person would be a good fit for the hire they're trying to make. So like as much as I can, try not to take things personally, because I think a lot of people spend so much time wondering, why'd this happen to me? And they sulk and they tell every colleague they have about the god-awful counteroffer that got accepted or whatever. It's like, just get over it, move on. Like a lot of good will happen in this business. Yes, some bad, like any business is like that. But like I do see recruiters in general make a lot of things about themselves that have nothing to do with it.
So true. Jumping over to the quick fire questions. Like I said, don't need to be quick answers. Like you've been around a lot of elite recruiters. Like what is one of the biggest pieces of advice that you would give to a recruiter that wants to go from good to elite?
I would say one of the quickest fixes of taking someone from an average to a good or very good recruiter is ultimately, why would you be interested in this job? And if you're pitching a job that even you can't get excited about, like why should the other person be excited about it? So like, do not get on the phone until your pitch is something that you sound animated and excited about. Until then, wait, do not make a single first call because you only have one chance to make a first impression. So I think it's really important people realize, like, unless you have enthusiasm, unless you have excitement and positivity in your voice when pitching your clients, you're almost doing them a disservice. So you got to make your pitch as sexy as possible, but also the pitch is great, so to speak. You don't share the pitch until you understand that person, you get to know them, you understand, what they're trying to accomplish in their career and what they are looking for. Because again, as I said before, our job is not to call someone, say, hey, do you have a few minutes? And go, great, let me tell you about this amazing opportunity and just spill your guts. Like that is not how to do this business. Like it's about finding fits. It's not about pitching jobs or opportunities.
So for a lot of recruiters, like they're working in a niche and like riches are in the niches, especially with your success. Like how can they adopt more of like an agent mindset to really just dominate?
It's, again, a daily task of showing up and doing your best. When you're feeling well, not feeling well, doesn't matter. Like you got to come in and work hard because again, it could be your 14th call of the day. That's the first time that person is ever talking to you and you have to be first time fresh. So I would just say, if your goal is to dominate in a niche, just do your absolute best every day. Ask yourself daily, how can I be better tomorrow than I am today? Keep trying to tweak things. But most importantly, learn from the people you're talking to. You can't learn a niche faster than learning from people in your niche that have been doing it longer. So how do I feel I'm one of the more knowledgeable people in my niche after 10 years? Because I've talked to thousands of people that in certain respects know a shit ton more than me about certain things. But because they taught me that little thing, and I also got someone else's like great insight on something they're really knowledgeable about, the combined amount of information I have is very hard to compete with, because I just tend to be very curious and want to know, well, why have you been successful? What have you done that's so unique? What insight do you have to share that very few others have? Like, you end up learning a lot by being exposed to a lot. So I would really recommend, especially people new in a niche, don't try to fake it. Like, if you are like pretending like you're the top recruiter in a niche, but you really don't know it that well and you're new to it, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. If you say, hey, I'm new to the niche, I'm super passionate, super excited about it, but I'm still trying to learn. Tell me about this company. What do they do? Why is that valuable? Who do they compete with? Why were you winning? Why were you losing? Tell me about your this company. Tell me about that company. Like, you learn a lot just by asking questions and be curious. Don't try to not ask questions because you think it makes you sound like an expert. People like helping people. So if you just share, hey, I'm trying to learn and this is what I want to learn from you, usually people volunteer it.
I think you've used the word learn about 18 or 19 times over the course of the last hour. Are you a reader?
I try to read. I wish I had more time for it, but I love to read.
So learning wise, like, what's the best place that you've learned something from outside of like the recruiting niche and focusing on the industry?
Again, it's talking to people. Like, you can learn a lot in a textbook and a lot on Google and a lot in ChatGPT, like finding and sourcing information. You cannot learn quicker than hearing it from someone who knows that subject matter better than you do. So again, encourage you, if you're trying to learn anything, go to an expert, say, hey, I'm coming to you because I perceive you as an expert, and can I learn from you? Are you open to helping me? Are you open to me asking you some questions? You'd be shocked how many incredibly successful people that you don't think take those calls that do when asked.
If you can go back in time with everything that you know now, the team you've built, the conversations, the investment fund, go back to when you passed the internship, you first got started. Well, maybe like a year afterwards, like you know what the hell you're doing. What advice would you go back and tell yourself?
Invest in Livongo and Hinge when you get the chance. But other than that, I'm just playing. I would just tell myself it's all going to be worthwhile. Put your head down and do not let yourself get distracted. I would say I was somewhat distracted in different respects for the first 5 to 6 years. I think the last 8 or so, I've been very focused. And I think, of course, there's things I could have done differently, but like for the most part, I got the broad strokes right. But again, I think the thing I would say about recruiting, and it is true of a lot of things, the only people who don't succeed are the ones that give up. So if you just don't give up and you keep working and you keep persevering and you keep learning from people that know a hell of a lot more than you, you will succeed. And it's just to what degree.
So if you want a good laugh, this next question actually came from you over dinner that I've been asking.
Okay.
So this is all your fault.
Thank you. All right. I'll have to eat my own medicine.
What's one of the biggest challenges that you've had to work through?
One of the biggest challenges is, I think, over time, managing and hiring people that have different skill sets and personalities and motivations. I think over the last 5-7 years since I've really hired most of my team, I've just learned a little bit more to delegate and to be trusting and to let people learn and fail at times without getting micromanagey or getting my hands, into things, because those learning experiences can be really, really valuable. I think I would certainly tell myself that. And then obviously, like we discussed, creating an operations function, investing in your business for the future growth is something I would very much want to recommend to my previous self and others. That has just been such an unlock. And it's allowed me, to really drive both of these businesses forward by investing in things that just make myself and even my recruiters and my team hyper efficient.
I was going to ask the last question, but I'm popping in a new one real quick. So you technically work for direct recruiters, but you run your own firm almost within there. If somebody wants to do that, how did they have that conversation? Like, I'm willing to go build my own place under this umbrella. How did that conversation really start? Or was that a model that was already there?
People had done the spawn off or spin off, some say before. Like, I wasn't the first person to be like, hey, I feel I'm high potential and I do want to start my own new category. But my advice is just walk into your mentor or boss's office or whatever you want to call it and just walk them through what you want your career to be. Hey, I do want to start my own thing at some point. And if you have a certain market in mind or a certain timeline in mind, it's great to share that. But just explain that, hey, I appreciate everything you did for me. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I will build this, but also continue to service you and our clients until you feel and until I help you replace me and help that next person replace my production, and I'll mentor and coach and, help them in any way I can. I think that's the right way to do it. And that's the way I did it. And ultimately that first year where again, my production, doubled a little bit over, and, it was really my breakout year. I had to make big sacrifices. That call from Jim Pursley when he's like, hey, I need to hire 10 people. That happened on a Thursday or Friday. I showed up Saturday morning and I worked 7 days a week for probably the first 6 months, 10 hours a day. And I don't think I took many, if any, days off. Definitely not Monday through Friday, but even the weekends. I think I almost showed up every day, at least for 3 or 4 hours on the weekends. And why did I do that? Because number one, it was the right thing to do. And two, it was my safety net that if this doesn't take off, I can't just leave Mike high and dry. And then when I go back and say, well, it didn't work out, can I get searches again? He's like, what are you talking about? You just dropped all the search work I had, threw it back at me and said, go find someone else to do. I wasn't going to do that, nor should anyone. So for that first 6 months, maybe even 9 months, I was juggling. I was building this new practice and continuing to recruit in that old space on my own and many of Mike's clients. And then eventually I'm like, hey, this thing's taken off. There's no shortage of companies that are going to need recruiting help in the employer and health plan market. I really want to build this thing. And I think, again, the teammates we have are ready, to take up that amount of production of 400, 500K of recruiting billings. So I would say come with your hat in hand, but also over deliver in the transition period.
You're part of the Pinnacle board. You're around some of the best recruiters. I see you online. You got a podcast. You're out there all the time. With what you've done for work, I'm sure you get questions. How do you do this? How do you pitch this? How do you get into a VC? How, some of the questions I gave you. With all of those questions that you've probably gotten, is there a question you wish people would actually ask you, but they never do?
Yes. I love the question, and it's been asked to me very few times. What do most recruiters mess up? That is so easy or so obvious that just, for whatever reason, the greats do it, but no one's identified oh, this is actually more key than it is. Think about this. In your day-to-day, how much of what you're exposed to is generally negative? The news you see on your phone and on Facebook and everywhere you go, there's negativity, there's doom and gloom, there's all these things. And everyone in recruiting's told, well, yeah, you got to be different. What does that mean? The first thing you can do to differentiate yourself is to be positive, to be high energy, to be optimistic, because no one needs another negative pessimist in their life. So if your goal is hey, how do I drive strong relationships? How do I separate myself and be memorable? The first thing you can do is be very upbeat, very positive, and very optimistic. And I know that can be very hard for people who are not that by nature, but I am telling you, if you're coming off as negative or doom and gloom, I promise you're wearing your clients out and your candidates out. And although they'll never tell you, or they probably might not even know like why they don't communicate with you as much as you'd like them to, it really comes down to when they see your name pop up on their phone, do they get a smile and laugh and kind of be like, oh, I want to take that call? Can I like justify taking it? Like, all right. Or are they inclined to be like, oh yeah, I don't have time to talk to that person. I'm going to press the button and it'll go to voicemail and I'll get to them later. So try to be that like positive shining light, because if you're not, it's costing you way more business and way more success than you could possibly imagine.
One last question. Rich Rosen wants to know how your life has gotten better with him in your life.
That's a great question. I love Rich. He's given me really good advice over the years. He will guinea pig any new tech. So I would say, other than some of the great advice he's given me and some of the laughs we've shared over the years, it's that Rich is fearless to try new things way before anyone else is willing to try them, so that by the time I'm probably ready in my very archaic way of doing the business to try something new, realistically, Rich has already tried it and I can ask him if it's worth doing or not.
Rich was bugging me to ask you that, so.
I love it.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. And two things before we let you go. First of all, if somebody wants to follow you, how do they go about doing that?
Just connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, if you want to learn more about digital health and employee benefits, I do have the podcast, The Digital Health Heavyweights. We're also coming out with a short form segment called Bending the Trend, where we're doing an interview series of benefits leaders and benefits consultants. And then, feel free to follow MVP Growth Partners of everything we share externally.
And anything else you want to share with the listeners before we let you go?
Just, again, this is the best business in the world, and it can be anything you want it to be if you have the imagination and the belief in yourself that you can do and accomplish anything. So just don't put limits on yourself. If you don't, no one else can. If you do, doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It really matters what you think you can accomplish. And if you think you can't, you're right. If you think you can, you're also right.
Norm, this is one of the problems with chatting with you. I think it's because we've had the chance to meet face to face, but I looked up and I was like, oh crap, we're already at 50 minutes. I'm already burning up time. So Norm, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing. It's one of those stories of how you can really differentiate yourself, how you can set yourself apart in the niche. Here's a blueprint. Here's something that you could do. Your mind is now expanded. Let's get to work and go crush the air. Thank you, Norm.
And one last thing, I actually sent this to my firm today. I was in search of hot sauce, so I go to like the main area of our office. Our healthcare group's kind of sequestered. I think we're too loud, and they don't like that. But I go to grab hot sauce, and I happen to notice a couple of earlier in career recruiters mention the word role instead of opportunity. So I sent this email like, hey, not calling out names, not to embarrass anyone, but like word selection is very important. And like you saying role instead of opportunity is like a small thing, but like it's actually bigger than you'd realize in terms of like the verbiage. But then I said something else. I said something else that I hear all the time, that people are making this mistake over and over again. And I can't describe how much you sound like everyone else by saying it. How many times have you asked someone, hey, how you doing, Ben? What's going on? And what's their answer most of the time? Usually it's, oh man, Ben, I'm so busy. Well, guess what? So is everyone else in the entire world. No one is like, oh yeah, I got plenty of time and like, I wish I had more things to do. So one last thing, like if you're trying to be different, when people ask, hey, how you doing? What's up? Like part of this, like being positive, being like an optimist, saying you're really busy doesn't get the conversation off to the best start. Like you want to say something interesting that like gets them excited about whatever you're excited about. Like that starts the relationship. So again, like another thing I wish you had asked is like, what is the most rudimentary, like harmless mistake people make is they answer that question crazy boringly by just saying, oh, I'm really busy. And like, then you sound like everyone else. Thus you're put in the box with everyone else. So if I encourage anyone to do anything here is just do things differently. Try to be your own person, try to do things your own way, be authentic to yourself. If you do those things, you'll certainly set yourself apart. You'll certainly have more fun. And if you're having more fun, then you usually have more success as a result.
Love that. Well, Norm, thank you. And for the listeners, go crush it.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. You're awesome at what you do.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Pinnacle Take Podcast with Benjamin Mena.